Hopefully everything's stuck. It looks good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am very excited for tonight's episode because we are going to be talking about something that I actually really enjoy. As many of you know, I am kind of this eternal optimist. So we're going to talk about using optimism to build mental resilience. And I am super happy to be joined by Chazz Scott, who is going to walk us through some questions related to this. So Chazz, thank you so much for joining us today and just being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Absolutely. So we do have a question queue. If anyone is here and would like to ask questions, make sure to put them into the chat and we will get them asked here of our guest tonight. And I'll just say a little bit about Chazz. Chazz is an author, keynote speaker, and resilience and mindset expert. After reading The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, just before graduating undergrad, Chazz went through a self-transformation that radically changed his paradigm on how to live a successful life. This new belief within himself led him to work alongside nuclear physicists at a national laboratory and eventually led him to start a nonprofit focused on reducing youth mental health stigmas. Under his consulting firm Supramentum, Chazz specializes in training leaders in well-being, peak performance, and sustainable success. Chazz is the executive director and chief creative optimist of Positively Caviar, a nonprofit focused on using optimism to build mental resilience and disrupt youth mental health stigmas in underserved communities. My words are going too fast for my brain to keep up, I think. The social enterprise provides experiential mental wellness workshops rooted in positive psychology to provide youth with preventative tools to curb stress and increase well-being to flourish in life. So Chazz, that is a lot. Thank you so much just for taking the time out to join us today.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm very happy and excited to be here.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about kind of your personal journey and what led you to become this mindset resilience coach and open up all these nonprofits and everything?
Yeah, so I think like most people, in your journey in life, I think things sort of happen and you don't really like them or something's off. So that's similar to what happened to me. So in the bio, you had mentioned that, I read Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, and it really transformed my entire life. I didn't even realize that how I was thinking was influencing how I feel, my circumstances in life, my confidence, my self-esteem. I didn't realize that was affecting how I felt. So I went down to Hampton University and I was studying computer science, and I failed my first programming class in school. And I just knew I wanted to work for Apple or Sony. And I was just sort of lost in life. So I picked up that book, and it really transformed how I looked at myself and how I looked at others and just my entire mindset on how to achieve a better life. Interestingly enough, I started reading every book I could in personal development and self-help, spirituality, metaphysics, anything where I could enhance the quality of my life. I was trying to read it, and I read it. And what I realized was there are a set of practices that I can implement in my life that can really enhance the quality of my life. So that leads me to my story of why I wrote my book. So in 2017, I had the car I wanted, I had the job I wanted, I had a nice apartment looking over the Potomac in Washington, D.C., and yet I was unhappy, I was depressed, and I was burnt out. I was working harder professionally, but I was still unhappy and depressed. And what I realized was there were things that I needed to do to fill up my cup so that I could live a better life. Meditation was one of them, a morning routine, these daily practices that I realized that, if you don't do, you feel like you're out of sync with who you are. Interestingly enough, when I started doing those things in my life, not only did I feel better, but the job that I actually hated going to started to get better. So it was like this change in me internally that affected my external circumstances. And that's when I realized, like, oh my goodness, like life starts with the inner first and then it influences the outer. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and kind of how I got started. And just before all of that, actually, I was teaching mental wellness workshops to underserved youth in Baltimore and DC, just to give youth mental wellness tools so they can balance their psychological state, introducing them to yoga, meditation, introducing them to how to disrupt negative self-talk, or even let them know what self-talk is. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that, because it's so true that you can be on paper all of these great, wonderful things in your life, but still you can be unhappy, right? Happiness is not something that you can write down and say, once I accomplish these 10 things, that will be happy, right? So that's very true. And for those of you who would like a link to the book, I did go ahead and link to Chazz's website and the book as well. So if you're interested in checking that out, feel free to do that. And the book that you mentioned earlier, The Power of Positive Thinking, I went ahead and linked to that one on Goodreads. Buy it wherever you want to buy it, but there it is on Goodreads. So we have a great question from the chat already, and that is from Bite Mark. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
Favorite poem? Ooh, this is good. Let's see, my favorite poem. It would have to be "If" by Rudyard Kipling. I actually had to learn that entire poem. I probably can't say it now, but in my fraternity, crossing over, I had to learn that entire poem and say it over and over again. But the reason why that poem means a lot to me is because, I think in life you sort of want to influence your own life and have power and have influence over your circumstances. And that poem sort of gives you a reminder that, you have the power to overcome, to achieve, to do the things that you want to do in your life. So that's always been a constant reminder for me.
Yeah, and that's a great one. So there's a link to the poem. It's a long one, or I would say I'll read it real quick, but it's not long. I say long. It's not long, but it's more than a few lines. So if you're interested in going and checking that one out, it is in the chat for you as well. So yeah, great one. Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
I do not have a true crime story.
No true crime
at all. But yeah, I don't. No, I do not have that at all.
How about like a favorite book beyond the one that we just talked about? How about a favorite book?
Favorite book? Besides Power of Positive Thinking, I think one of my other favorite books is Three Magic Words by U.S. Anderson. It's more of a sort of self-help metaphysics type book, but and more spirituality based, but it really sort of enhances, who you are and how to show up more effectively in your life. It was sort of like you ever read a book and your mind just sort of, wow, mind blown. Like, this is information that you already kind of know, but it kind of reaffirms who you are and how to show up in the world more effectively. So that's what Three Magic Words. It gives you power and peace and understanding in life. And that's what that book will give you.
I love that. I'm going to add it to my, for some reason, I don't know, every now and then Goodreads just signs me out, but I've got it pulled up so I can add it to my want to read later.
Yeah. That's a good book.
Our topic tonight is kind of bringing optimism and resilience together. So generally speaking, how does optimism play a role in building resilience?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when I first started reading all these personal development books, a lot of them were rather old and wasn't at that point in time when they were written, they weren't really substantiated and from a scientific point of view. So when I read Power of Positive Thinking, I was like, okay, I don't really take things face value. I understand that thoughts actually can influence how I feel and how life can show up for me. But I took it a step beyond that, and I said to myself, okay, from a scientific point of view, how does this make sense? And then I started researching neuroplasticity, the study of how your brain changes over time according to your thought patterns. And the more that you have the same thought over and over again, the more it becomes ingrained into a habit, the more it becomes ingrained into who you are as a person. I was like, oh, wow, this is something that substantiates many of the personal development books that are talking out there in terms of how to enhance the quality of your life from a mindset, psychological point of view. And then I took it beyond that, where I was trying to understand, hey, how do thoughts actually influence your immune system? Sure enough, there are studies that show how negative thoughts or stressful thoughts can release cortisol through the body and actually make you fearful and stressed, right? Or sweat. So anyway, I say that to say, when we talk about optimism and how you think, there's a clear sign on how your psychological state can influence your outcomes and how you show up throughout your day. So when it comes to optimism and resilience, resilience is simply the definition of resilience is to feel as though that you have the power to overcome your circumstances or your problems, and feeling as though that you have the tools to do so. So if there's a setback, you know how to balance your psychological state and you know how to overcome. So with optimism, psychologically, if you think that you can overcome it, you're much more in a better position, much more in a psychological state to put yourself beyond the problem that you're going through, as opposed to constantly beating yourself up in your own head and not being your biggest cheerleader. So when you have a thought that continues to affirm what you're going through or how you can overcome it, it widens your perception of what you believe is possible for you. You start to look for solutions, and you start to become more resilient in finding tools to actually overcome your problems. So this is where, your psychological state can ultimately influence how you show up, as well as making you more effective at overcoming your problems.
I love the way that you defined resilience there, because it's all about what you perceive and what you think and where your mind is, because resilience is, again, like happiness, not something you can just say, tick, 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 I've got these 3 things, therefore I am resilient. It's just your ability to know that you can do these things and get through these things and kind of come out on the other side of it. So that's really great. And then optimism, I've been working with one of my kids on being a little more optimistic lately. So he's got a performance coming up tomorrow, and he was talking about, I keep messing up on this part. And I'm like, right, stop thinking about the mistakes. I want you to think about how proud Pappy, that's my dad, is going to be when he hears you play this song tomorrow in public. Like, do you think he's going to care that you missed a note in that one part? Do you think he's even going to, notice necessarily? Probably not. What's he going to be doing? Cheering me on. That's right. So trying to put him into that, like, you got to think forward to when it's going to go well versus obsessing over what's going wrong right now. That's hard. That's hard for sometimes kids, especially, to grasp.
It certainly can be. And one of the things that, when I started doing research on this stuff in terms of the brain being malleable, the brain can change over time, particularly in kids. Kids, their brains, their prefrontal cortex, their areas of learned behavior are much more influenced during certain areas or certain stages of the brain's development when they're younger. So, these types of practices, as you mentioned, these are things that can be learned, and it can become a way of thinking or an outlook that you can teach somebody. Now, as you get older, it can be a lot harder because we've been stuck in our own ways and stuff like that. But the brain can change, and it is extremely malleable. So you're absolutely right. I think giving kids these tools or this outlook is so critical because it sticks with them until, they're much older, and they don't even realize it because it's very subconscious. It influences you at an unconscious level.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the part about like different ages being a little bit either more difficult or just kind of different. So you work with business leaders and community youth and private clients. Is the approach that you take in what you do very different from group to group, or how do you tailor your approach to address different needs and challenges, either across ages or across situations? How do you tailor that approach to building resilience and optimism?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing here is the audience. In terms of when we do our mental wellness workshops with youth, we like to make them fun, and we like to ensure that we're not just talking at them.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you engage these children and meet them where they are, because many times they've never been exposed to this content. They don't want to be in the classroom. They want to do other things. So we try to make them fun, engaging, and let them realize that, when life hurts, when life is stressful, there's tools that can help increase the quality of your life or make them happy, right? But you have to meet them where you are and let them know what that means. So my approach is much different because, we all have different sets of problems in your different age groups, right? I mean, if you're 30 through 40 and 50, I mean, you're worried about making sure that you got your bills paid. You're worried about ensuring that your marriage stays together, or, there's different stress in that age group than there's a stress in terms of the kids that we work with. So you have to meet them where they are. So you have to get into their heads and understand, what is it that, what tools can I give them that can help them, right? So meditation, yoga, these are things that you can expose youth to, right? But do it in a way that's fun and engaging. With some of the seminars that I do, I don't necessarily teach yoga in those seminars with some corporations and organizations that I work with, but I do teach them some lifestyle habits that can help enhance their life, such as a morning routine, to help them kick off their day, meditation in the morning, maybe some reading, maybe some exercise, right? So, from that standpoint, lifestyle habits would have a greater effect on their life, as opposed to, kids, they're still trying to discover their habits and stuff like that. So it's really about just getting them exposed to these tools at first. So yeah, there's completely different approaches, but the biggest thing is making sure you meet them where they are.
Mm-hmm. And I sometimes I wish that things like seminars were a little more like we were all children, right? A little more engaging, but yeah, you're not going to have someone, a group of business professionals at a conference in suit and tie or whatever, start doing yoga where you can, if you're at like a youth center or something, that's something you can demonstrate very hands-on. And yeah, it just depends on the situation, I guess.
Yes, it does. And I usually change it up a bit depending on who the audience is. And if I'm feeling some different energy, I'll say, hey, let's try this out. Let's see, let's maybe do a breathwork exercise if they're open and interested into it. So you always change it up. You got to meet the audience where they are.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, I feel like kids learn a lot from their parents. Like my kids, unfortunately, get a lot of experimentation from me on the different things that I try. So they get exposure to a lot of things. But if you're someone who only relies on internal meditation or only relies on yoga or something, they're not going to see all these different approaches and everything. So having someone like you out there in the community exposing them to all these different things, I think is really, really important, because you don't know what's going to work for you until you know about it,
That's the first step, awareness.
Yeah.
Just having the awareness to know that there's tools out there to enhance the quality of your life is definitely the first step. If you don't know, you don't know. So we're always 2 steps behind. So you're right.
That's true. Growling says, I'm not a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person, at least if the glass is of beer. Then I just know it'll be a glass full empty. If it's beer because you'll drink it, listen. Well, and I think, so I'll ask you, Chazz, what do you think about are you a glass half empty, glass half full kind of person? Because I feel like everyone on a different day, different hour of their day could be different situations. Are there really like this person is always optimistic and this person is always pessimistic? Is it that black and white?
I don't think it's that black and white, but positive psychology, which was started at, I think, UPenn, Martin Singelman, he does a lot of research on positive psychology. And there are ways in which people think in terms of like their pattern of thought is more so centered more towards the optimism side versus the pessimistic side. So, but it's not totally black and white. But what we're saying is basically long periods of time, this person tends to be more optimistic. Long periods of time, this person tends to be more pessimistic, right? And that's not to say that they can't change, but in the state that they're in for these long periods of time, this is kind of how they operate. Your first question, I forgot what you said after that. Oh, the glass half full, half empty. For me personally, when I was in college, I went down to Hampton University in Virginia, I was really a pessimist, really just very negative. But I didn't realize like how I was thinking was influencing how I felt, was influencing, how things showed up for me in my life, making my perception on how, my life was turning out. I didn't realize I was making myself upset and becoming my worst enemy. It wasn't until I started reading all these personal development books, I was like, oh, there's a way to enhance who I am right now without feeling like this, right? That started to make myself reflect mentally, psychologically, like, what am I saying to myself? Like that negative or positive self-talk. I didn't realize there was a voice in my head that was influencing that. But once you become aware and you sort of awaken, let there be light, you start to awaken, you start to say to yourself, wait a minute, there's a small little voice in the back of my head that's actually influencing how I feel, how I show up, and the hats that I'm wearing, and the stress that I feel. And then it starts to give you a little bit more control over that once you become aware of it.
Yeah. All right. So another kind of, I don't know, flip comment in the chat, but the solution is to always go somewhere with free refills. I actually really like that comment, Growling, because the solution kind of is to go somewhere where there's free refills, right? The solution is to change the way that you're thinking and surround yourself with some of these things. So how can someone cultivate optimism in their daily life, especially if they're faced with challenges or setbacks that make them want to view it as kind of glass half empty? How can someone cultivate that optimism instead?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is being aware of your environment and figuring out what are the inputs that are coming in that are influencing how you feel. In my book, chapter 2, it's called Guard Your Mind. And I have a tool in the back which basically says, hey, we don't often realize that social media, the type of content that we read, the type of news that we watch, the type of people that we expose ourselves to influences who we are and how we feel about ourselves. So chapter 2, I discuss guard your mind, become aware of what you're exposing yourself to. So, those negative influences don't unconsciously influence you. Sometimes we don't often realize, like, this person who's constantly spewing out negativity is also influencing you and you don't even realize it. So, just being mindful of that is super key, just to protect yourself, protect your mind, body, and soul. And sometimes it's really hard to do so, right? But at least you're becoming aware of it so you can understand how it makes you feel so you can make, better decisions in terms of your environment. And not only that, I think the biggest thing, at least for me, because I've had issues with this, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I want to start scrolling on my phone and scroll on social media and just continue to scroll. And for me, what I realized was it started to create like more anxiety throughout my day. And I felt like I was just sort of off in the morning. Mm-hmm. So I realized I needed a space for myself to really ground myself before the day starts, to set up my mindset so I can tackle the day much more effectively. So that's also another thing, to start off your day with optimism. Just be mindful of, grabbing your phone at the crack of dawn and just mindlessly scrolling on social media, because it can make you very frazzled and make you feel like, stressed early in the morning.
Yeah. When also it's bad for your eyes, like not to go down the, I'm getting to the age where I just need glasses for everything route, but I am. So, constantly staring at a screen. I work on my computer. I do this at night. So constantly staring at a screen can really take a toll, not only mentally, but also physically. So, here's your annual plug. It's December. Go to your eye doctor before your insurance doesn't cover it for the year. Now that's optimism. So are there specific practices or habits that folks can incorporate it into their lives or their routines to enhance resilience as well?
100%. And I think the biggest thing is having a ritual that you can sort of put yourself in a state where you feel comfortable daily. So what I mean by that, it could be a morning routine. It could be a nightly routine. It could be anything that sort of grounds you, that sort of centers you, that sort of gives you energy, that sort of lets you know that everything's going to be okay. So particularly for me, a morning routine is something that has been extremely important for me. I know when I have a bad day or if I'm not feeling all that well, I always return back to a ritual that sort of grounds me and lets me know to sort of fill up my cup. So for me, that means I do a lot of running. So I do like a run, do some type of exercise, do some meditation, 20 minutes in the morning, and then I do some reading. And all three of those areas, you got the mind in terms of reading, you got the body, and then, spirituality, your soul. So the mind, body, and soul, those are the things that I really think can enhance the quality of your life, especially as it relates to resilience, because there's only so many things that we can control over our lives. The outside circumstances, we can't control them, but what we can control is us. What we can control are the actions that we take. And if you have sort of some daily habits or a daily ritual that can sort of maintain control over your state and how you feel, or at least influence that, you're better, more equipped to handle life much more effectively, especially when stress arises or, somebody cuts you off in traffic and you're pissed off, right? You're able to better your psychology. You're able to handle that much more effectively when you're grounded in who you are.
Yeah. I'll tell y'all my secret for what I do whenever I get cut off in traffic, and I'm working with my 17-year-old, and I've told him the same thing. But if someone cuts you off in traffic, you just got to tell yourself they're rushing to be with their mommy or their grandma, or their wife is having a baby. Someone is sick in the hospital. They're rushing to get there. At that point, you just let them go. You're like, go, Godspeed, bye. But I appreciate you saying, at the very beginning of that, you were like, whether it's a morning routine or a nighttime routine, because so many times you hear things about optimism and resilience and even just talking about daily habits, right, that you're supposed to have, right? And they talk about do this first thing when you wake up. But for some of us, myself in particular, I am not a morning person. If you ask me to do anything in the morning, it's not going to happen. But nighttime, I can establish a routine there and I can do something there. So I appreciate you including those of us who aren't naturally morning people in that advice as well.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it's whatever works for that individual. But at least you know that there's tools out there to enhance your resilience, enhance your psychological state. I mean, it could be as simple as walking your dog every day at 5 p.m. and just getting a fresh, some sunshine, right? But something that grounds you will enhance your psychological state so that you can handle the throes of life.
Yeah. Are there any misconceptions about optimism or resilience that you've encountered that you would like to address?
Any misconceptions? I think the biggest misconception is people believe that, if I'm not resilient or strong or tough now, then I can't be that in the future. This is something that can be learned, and they've done psychological tests and UPenn and positive psychology that supports that, positive thinking, quote unquote, or optimism is something that can be learned. Resilience is something that can be learned. Your brain is malleable and can change over time, due to a thought pattern or an action, and repetitively doing those things deepens, your neural pathways in your brain to make you, who you want to become. So I think the misconception of feeling as though that I'm not this person, I'll never be that, or my parents were like this, so I'll always be this, those misconceptions have to go. Now, we do know that there is some influence as it relates to that, but we do know from studies like neuroplasticity and epigenetics, meaning you have influence over your genetics more than we realize as it relates to our environment, your diet, your lifestyle habits, and many of those things that we expose ourselves to. We're starting to realize that we have more power than we realize. And really, all the work that I do is letting people know and realize that we do have more power than we realize, and then empower those people to realize that you can change, you can become better, and you can do the things that you want to do, and helping to expose people to these tools to enhance their quality of their life.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of thinking that you just can't change, can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? That's such a saying. But like we talked about before, everyone can learn something new. I'm constantly learning new stuff, constantly learning new things. And so it's never too late to learn something new or to change a behavior or something like that. Optimism is often associated with just a positive outlook. So how much, or should it, be balanced with a realistic understanding of challenges and potential obstacles? Like, is there a good balance of optimism and realism that you should try to strike?
Absolutely. You should definitely have a balance. But when it comes to sort of the brain, right, we want to make sure that your psychological state is expecting and hoping for the best. Sometimes we don't know how things will occur in our lives, but we're hoping that it's better than where we are right now. Now, it's great to add some realistic expectations in there, but the biggest thing that we want to do is, as you mentioned, we want to look at the glass half full than half empty. And part of that is making sure that you have a psychological state that's benefiting where you want to go. And benefiting where you want to go is usually a positive outlook. Now, it can also be realistic, but you want the expectation that things will be better than where it is right now. And I think that's the key. If things can't get better, maybe a change in perspective, maybe a change in understanding. Those are things where, realism and realistic expectations can come into play to make sure that, hey, I know that there's things in life that sometimes I can't change, but how can I change my perspective on how this may affect how I feel in a positive light, and stuff like that. So I think there's a balance there.
Yeah. I mean, you can't just wish things into being, right? Just because you're optimistic about playing the lottery doesn't mean you're going to win the lottery.
Right.
I wish that were it, but that doesn't make it so. So I feel like, what you're saying about understanding the things that are going on and how much influence you have over something might not be how much influence you wish to have over something. But that's another thing that I talk about with my kids. And I go back to my kids because they're growing, so they have a lot of lessons to learn, right? So I always go back to things that I talk to with my kids, but it's like you can only control what you can control. And that's just what you think and say and do. And so, but that can be hard, right? That can be hard to do.
Absolutely. It is certainly hard. But as over time, you start to realize what you can control, what you can't control, and you start to figure out what works for you and what things you probably need to change and how you look at certain things. But especially with kids, I mean, you're giving them the tools to see things clearer, and hopefully they're able to pick up from muscle memory the things that you're teaching them, and as they deepen those pathways, they're able to look at things clearer and make better decisions on where they are in lives and where they want to go.
Yeah. One of my children is ever the optimist and keeps popping his head over here by my door. Probably to try to say goodnight again, even though we've said goodnight and he's been put in bed. Oh, he just likes to come over here and get a little bit of attention. That's okay. Now, a little bit on the kind of skepticism side, right? So some argue that self-help concepts like optimism really oversimplify some complex issues. So how do you address concerns about the self-help industry in general and optimism as well as a part of that?
I'm glad that you're bringing this into the discussion. So particularly with my story, I started reading a lot of those self-help personal development books, right? And I said to myself, okay, yeah, think positive, my life will get better. Okay, let me prove this, right? Let me prove it in my own life. Let me back it up with some scientific facts, right? So I talked about neuroplasticity. I talked about, epigenetics and, how your thoughts can influence your genes and how your thoughts can influence your brain, right? But I think the key here is to realize that we can use all of these tools to enhance the quality of your life. So the self-help personal development space sometimes gets a bad rap because, it's really hard to think positive when you're stressed, right? You want me to think positive? I'm stressed. Good luck with that, right? But one of the things that I've been teaching people to balance their psychological state is to do a breathwork exercise, right? So you can't always think positive when you're stressed, but guess what? You can influence your body to calm down what's called your sympathetic nervous system, right? Your fight or flight nervous system, to spin up your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest nervous system. So simple breathwork exercises where your out breaths are longer than your in breaths can actually spin down your sympathetic nervous system to actually send your body into a state of coherence, a state of more patience within yourself, and to calm down that stress response, right? So putting you in a better position to think positive or to be open to new perspectives. Good luck trying to force yourself to think positive when you're stressed. But when you are engaging in breathwork exercises, when you do meditation, when you start to change your psychological state, when you have these tools to enhance your body's wellness needs, you're able to put yourself in a better position. So using all of those tools can really help your life. We don't take things just face value. We hear terms, we understand them, and then we say, okay, how can I use this in my daily life to enhance who I am right now, right? So that's what I did, like positive thinking. Okay, all right, that makes sense, but how does that affect the body? Okay, neuroplasticity. Okay, well, how can I enhance the quality of my life right now? What tool can I use to do that? Okay, breath work, meditation. Oh, wow, there's a lot of studies out there that say meditation and breath work can really enhance the quality of your life, make you more focused, make you more calm. Your prefrontal cortex shuts off and you're able to have more brain states of more coherence. So when you put all of these into the mix, you start to say to yourself, oh, there's some connective tissue in here. And if I can find myself using some of these tools, oh, my life can get a little bit better. And I have some tools to fall back on. So I think skepticism is good. And I think we should continue to have skepticism in many of the personal development self-help books because we want to back it up with research. Mm-hmm. We want to back it up with people that have experiences where they're enhancing the quality of life or this isn't working because we want to get better at achieving a better quality of life and then to give those tools to other people. So I love the skepticism, but we can also back it up. And they've been doing that for quite some time now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if you're being a little skeptical, as long as you're willing to look into the answers, because you can, if you want to have that challenger mindset of, okay, I heard this, I'm going to go do my own research and figure out what's right for me and what the science is behind it. And doing that helps you understand it a little bit better yourself, right? So now you're not just repeating something back that someone else said to you. You've got the science that backs it up and you understand it a little bit better on a different level.
Yeah. Good point. I mean, you have to experience it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. And I think that's all really the importance of it is if you're really searching for tools to enhance the quality of your life, find them, use them. If it doesn't work, move on.
Yeah.
Right. But if they do work, hopefully share it with somebody else. But I think a balance of healthy skepticism is really important. We should continue with that so that we can have better tools.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned breath work also. Do you have a favorite breath work exercise? I know people talk about box breathing or like the 3-7-6 or whatever.
Yeah, the a 4-7-8 breathwork exercise. So I used to do that, but I've actually been on YouTube a lot lately. And YouTube has tons of breathwork exercises where you just put on your headphones and you just breathe how the person
Yeah.
breathes in the headphones. And they have these 30-minute, 40-minute breathwork exercises. And typically I do them, after my day ends because my mind is super busy. I need to kind of calm down and decompress. So I've been using those a ton. So if you could just search breathwork on YouTube, there are a ton of exercises out there that can really make you feel like amazing, really calm, really coherent, and it changes you like that. It changes your state like that. It's not like, oh, think positive and my life is better. No, it's like, oof, I feel really balanced and relaxed, and it happens like that if you do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't looked them up on YouTube, but my watch does a breath exercise. So like I can go to the little thing on here and I can say I want to do some breathing and it'll be like, okay, it shows this little flower. It's like, okay, breathe in and now you start breathing out. And it's just so convenient. Like it's wherever you want to get a breathing exercise, it's there right now.
Well, that's so important. I knew watches were out there like the, I don't know if that's a Apple Watch, but I know there's other watches out there.
This one's a Samsung. This one's a Samsung. Yeah. Oh yeah. So here. Oh wait, no, that's breathe. That's stress. Where's the one? I was going to show you what it does, but now of course I can't find it. Oh no, now it wants me to do a workout. No, stop. I'm not doing a workout. Stop. I'm not going to do it. Yeah, but this is the Samsung watch, and it just like all of them have such good options to just go on and find something that is going to help you. I know how to start it from my phone. I'm sure there's a way to start it from my watch too, but.
Right. No, that's really cool. I think the only thing I was just going to say was, technology and iPhones and Apple Watches and watches in general, they're really kind of reinforcing us to sort of connect with ourselves, connect with our breath. And, this is where like technology is really enhancing the quality of our lives. I mean, we don't realize like how to connect with our breath throughout the day. And I think, some of these technologies and some of the apps are really helping to bring that awareness to many of us, like all the meditation apps, the breathwork exercises. Yeah. It's really great if you can use them and it reminds you to sort of connect with yourself.
I'm going to have to get my 10-year-old to start alternating a breathwork exercise in between some of his other video content that he consumes. Right now we have a deal. He can watch a couple of videos that aren't educational, and then he has to watch one educational video. Oh, wow. Maybe now I'll do like, all right, you can watch a couple of normal ones and an educational one and then a deep breathing one. I'll have to go on and favorite some for him to pick from. So I think that would be helpful. He gets really wrapped up in his head sometimes, and it's hard to kind of calm him down. But once he gets calm, he can be more rational. But boy, is he not rational sometimes.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that'll be really good, especially for children. I don't think we've, with our mental wellness workshops, we haven't introduced breath work yet. It's mostly been meditation and yoga. But, man, that would be amazing for kids because they have a tool to fall back on.
That requires nothing else. That's the thing. That's what I like about breathing exercises and stuff, is that you don't have to have a pen and paper. You don't have to have music. You don't have to have a quiet space. You're already breathing. It's just controlling the breathing in a certain way. So yeah, I think that's really cool. We've talked about stress and kind of challenging situations. Are there specific strategies for maintaining optimism during times of prolonged stress? I mean, we've all faced globally a lot of prolonged periods of stress. So what are some strategies for maintaining optimism in that situation?
Yeah, I really have to kind of go back to what I had mentioned before in terms of some type of ritual daily that sort of grounds you and centers you. There's only so much that we can influence in terms of our circumstances, The one thing that we do have control over more than most is our habits and sort of the decisions that we make each and every day. So, having something that grounds you and centers you is just so key, especially prolonged stress. Many times you feel like you're never going to get out of it, right? But at least you have something to return to every single day that fills up your cup. And I think for a lot of us, stressed about the bills, stressed about the wife, stressed about the husband, stressed about the job, stressed about the traffic, right? All of these different stressors sort of add up over time, and you never have the opportunity to sort of empty your cup. And if you can find something to empty your cup daily during states of prolonged stress to increase your outlook on life is so key. And like I said, it doesn't have to be meditation, it doesn't have to be breath work. It could be walking your dog at 5 o'clock. It could be making tea in the morning, right? It could be watering your garden. It can be anything that connects you to you. And I think that's key. You find something that works for you to fill up your cup during states of extreme transition or extreme stress. You have something that sort of grounds you daily because, there's this famous quote, first you create your habits and then your habits create you. So we want to make sure that we have some habits that are sort of fostering who we want to become continually. And if you don't, the stress, the prolonged stress during those moments in time it'll be a lot harder to maintain. And rituals happen to be a great way to sort of maintain that stress, to put your body back into a state of more so coherence and filling up your cup daily.
Yeah, I like that. Just find a way to fill up your cup.
Yes.
And it's like we've talked about earlier also, it's different from different for each person. So what works for one person might work for you. You won't know until you give it a try. But it might not also. And that doesn't mean that other person is wrong. It just means that it doesn't work for you, the way that it works for them. Well, we are coming up on the end of the stream, so we're trying to keep this one to an hour tonight. So folks in the chat, if you have any other questions for Chazz, make sure to pop them into the chat and we will get them asked here. And then it's time for the magic moment of the stream. And I happen to have a magic wand here. If I can turn it on. If you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
That's good. I would say that it's similar to sort of the mental health and the stigmas part. A lot of the work that I do in inner city youth in Baltimore and DC is helping to remove the stigmas. Mental health can be a dark subject to talk about, and then that also causes youth and many of us to sort of shy away from the help that you may need, and to think that it's bad to feel bad. And it's not bad to feel bad. We've all felt bad before. And there are tools out there to hopefully enhance the quality of your life if you go seek them. And exposing yourself to these tools it's just so important. Mm-hmm. So I think that's my magic wand, if I could wave it, is, there are periods in life where it can be downright awful, stressful, it can be depressing, you could be going through a tough time or a mental health issue, but knowing that, this is a journey in life and there's tools out there to hopefully enhance the quality of your life is key. So I've been helping to remove the stigma so kids feel comfortable approaching and going and getting the help that they need and letting them know that they're not alone. There's people that have been in your shoes before. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the biggest things that I think, if I could wave a magic wand.
I agree wholeheartedly because the adults in kids' lives have been through so much shit, right? We've all been through some sort of shit in our lives. And even though we might not like to talk about it, or we might not like to express what we're going through, it's important that kids know that they're not the first ones to experience something, and that they're not alone in however it is that they're feeling about something, or whatever their thoughts are, that they can share them and without, causing some sort of craziness. They've got to have some safe spaces to do that. And the only way to create those safe spaces is for adults to step up and create them. So I absolutely agree. Well, I'm gonna open it up to you, Chazz, to just see if you have anything else that you want to cover, that you want to talk about that we didn't get to. I will post your socials one more time, website, all that good stuff. But anything you want to cover that we didn't get to talk about?
I think the only thing that I have is, number one, thank you for having me on, is the book. My book, Success Starts Within, Achieve Your Potential Through Radical Self-Care, is really a book that I wish that I read when I was younger, where it can really give you the tools to enhance the quality of your life. And it's really redefining what success is. Most of us sort of define success as material items, money, cars, clothes, the perfect wife, the perfect husband. And what I've been trying to do is redefine what success is, and it's really about inner well-being. And if you can, have some tools that you can use daily, that's success. Success is being able to see somebody cut you off in traffic and you feeling okay about it, right? Exactly what you said, which is, oh, this person's probably going to see their mother, their father, they're going to the hospital. Like, that is success. The fact that that external experience is not going to influence how I feel internally. I'm going to still show up as me. I'm not going to let that stress affect who I am. I'm not going to bring that stress to my coworker, to my husband, to my wife, right? So that's success. And I've been trying to help redefine what success means to give people the tools to enhance the quality of your life. So that's what my book is about. And, for anybody that's listening, if you're suffering from burnout, stress, or looking for a new way of looking to redefine what success is, this would be a perfect book for you.
Yeah. And that's something that I think everyone experiences a little bit sometimes, right? A little bit of burnout, a little bit of stress. So definitely go get that book. The website is right there where you can go and get that book as well. There's a link for you in the chat. And Bite Mark says, only an hour. I know. Only an hour. We're going to keep it to an hour today. That's fine. She says, thank you so much for being here. I've had a good time and learned some new stuff. I will echo that as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out today, Chazz. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, chat, give me just a minute. Let me disconnect with Chazz and I will be right back. Stick around. Get all the things turned back on. Thank you guys so much for being here for that Mental Health Monday. That was a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and end. I'll end the broadcast on YouTube and probably start it back up because we're going to do some civilization stuff. And of course, I don't want you to miss out on that, but it's too hard to break YouTube videos into like chapters. So I'm going to stop and I'll start.